Welcome back to This is Thailand. Most of the stories we tell on this channel follow a recognizable shape. A man arrives, he meets someone. He falls for her, or for the idea of her, or for the idea of himself when he's with her. Money moves in one direction, the dream curdles slowly, then all at once. He loses more than he budgeted for and less than he deserved, depending on how you look at it, and he goes home or he doesn't, either way changed. Today's story is a bit different. Today we have Brendan, 58 years old. Cork, Ireland. Retired IT support technician, a man who spent the better part of his adult life being lied to at work, at home, in ways large and small, and who developed, over those years, a particular and refined talent for sitting very still and letting the truth come to him at its own pace. Brendan came to Thailand not chasing love and not chasing a dream. He came, by his own account, because someone he trusted sent him 3 words on WhatsApp that landed somewhere he hadn't expected. What happened after that, in a massage shop near the old city walls of Chiang Mai, is one of the more unusual stories we've had the privilege of sharing on this channel. It's not the biggest loss we've ever documented, not even close, but it might be the most honest account we've ever heard of what Thailand actually costs, and I don't mean the bot. This one's going to stay with you. Here's his story, in his own words, right. So. I'll tell you what I always tell people when I start this story, which is that I am not a cautionary tale in the traditional sense. Nobody cleaned me out. Nobody ran off with my pension. I didn't build a house in someone else's name and watch it disappear. If you're here for a disaster, I apologize in advance. The financial damage, I'll tell you now, was roughly the cost of a couple of rounds in a Cork pub on a Friday night. But I'm telling the story anyway, because the bit that cost me wasn't the money. And that part, one found, is harder for people to hear. My name is Brendan. I'm from Cork originally, though I've lived in various parts of the South over the years. I spent 22 years doing IT support for a mid-sized logistics company help desk, mostly. Which means I spent 22 years as the man people called when something had gone wrong, usually something they'd caused themselves, and needed to not be their fault. You learn things in that job. The main thing you learn is that people are remarkably consistent liars, not malicious mostly, just comfortable with a version of events that protects them from embarrassment. The user who definitely didn't click anything, the manager who barely touched the settings. You hear the same story so many times, in so many variations, that you stop needing them to tell you what happened. You just look at the screen, and the screen tells you. I carry that habit home with me every evening for 22 years. My 3 wives, in sequence, would tell you this was not always a pleasant quality in a husband. I won't linger on the marriages. They don't deserve to be made into a list. 3 women, 3 genuine attempts, 3 endings that were nobody's fault in any dramatic sense. Just a man who couldn't make a thing stick. And 3 women sensible enough to eventually stop waiting for him to figure out why. The last one was finalized in the spring of 2022. The house in Douglas sold 6 months after that. I walked away with €158,000, which was the most money I'd ever had in one place, and no one to have an opinion about it. The lads at work stopped asking about my personal life around the 2nd divorce. My mother stopped asking questions of any specificity around the 3rd. There's a particular Irish silence that functions as compassion, where the people who love you simply decide to stop requiring you to explain yourself, and you're meant to understand that as kindness. I did understand it. I was grateful for it, genuinely, but it also meant that by the end of 2022, I was eating alone in a house I'd just sold, in a city where everyone knew me, and the knowing had become a kind of weight. I wasn't depressed. I want to be clear about that because it's the obvious assumption and it isn't accurate. I wasn't miserable, I wasn't lost, I was just done. Done with the particular shape of the life I'd been living. Done with the commute, and the help desk, and the lads in the pub on a Friday, and the careful subject changes at Sunday dinner. Done in the way you're done, with a system that's been running too long on failing hardware. It still works, but you can hear it working. I ate alone for 14 months after the house sale. I noticed this at some point, not with alarm, just as a data point, 14 months of dinners I'd cooked myself at a table I owned in a rented flat in Ballinlough. And the honest thing, the thing I didn't say to anyone at the time, was that I hadn't actually minded. The quiet was fine. The routine was fine. I was fine. Which is either a healthy sign of self-sufficiency or a fairly serious warning, and I genuinely could not tell you which. There's a man I worked with for years. I'll call him Dermot, because that's his name and he won't care. Similar vintage to me. Similar wreckage, in the personal sense. He took early retirement the year before I did, and after about 3 months of Ballinlough quiet of his own, he relocated to Chiang Mai in northern Thailand. He was not the sort of man who sent postcards or made a performance of his adventures. He sent WhatsApp messages, irregular ones, just photographs, mostly a bowl of noodles, the inside of a temple, a view from somewhere with mountains in the background. Occasionally a line of text, grand out, he'd write, warm, cheap, quiet. And then one evening, a message that just said, nobody knows me here. I read that on a Tuesday night in Ballinlow, eating rice I'd cooked because it was easy, and something in it landed in a way I hadn't anticipated. Not a longing exactly, more like a recognition. The particular appeal of a place where the accumulated knowledge of everyone who'd known you for 30 years simply didn't apply. Where you were just a man, unnamed, unhistoried, eating noodles in the warmth. I spent approximately 20 minutes doing research after that. Checked the visa situation, tourist visa, 60 days, extendable. Checked the cost of a one-bedroom apartment in Chiang Mai. Found a number that seemed improbable by Cork standards. Booked a one-way flight to Bangkok departing March the 4th. I told my mother I was taking a holiday. She asked when I'd be back, and I said I wasn't sure yet, and she said to ring her when I landed, and that was the conversation. She didn't ask for details. That was the kindness again. I didn't correct her assumption that I meant a fortnight. I brought one large bag and my laptop. Left the furniture with the flat. There wasn't much that was worth the sentiment of keeping. I remember sitting in Cork Airport at 5:30 in the morning, waiting for the first leg to Heathrow, drinking a coffee that tasted like it resented being made, and taking a kind of quiet inventory of the situation. 57 years old. More money than I'd ever had. Nowhere I was supposed to be. Nobody expecting me home. I found, somewhat to my own surprise, that this felt less like running away than like finally turning off a machine that had been making a noise for years. I picked up my bag when they called the gate. That was the beginning of it. Bangkok hit me the way Bangkok hits everyone, which is to say, completely and without apology. I'd read about it, of course. You can't book a flight to Thailand without the internet deciding you need 17 articles about sensory overload and street food etiquette and things not to do in temples. I'd skimmed a few of them on the plane and arrived thinking I was prepared, which is exactly the kind of thinking Bangkok exists to correct. Suvarnabhumi Airport is enormous and air-conditioned to the point of aggression. And then you step outside to get a taxi, and the heat lands on you like a physical object. Not warm, hot. The kind of hot that has weight to it. March in Bangkok is 34 degrees and humid enough that your shirt is damp before you've reached the cab rank. I stood there for a moment, bag in hand, and thought, right, this is a different thing entirely. I'd booked 3 nights near Asoke to begin with. A clean, functional place, nothing fancy. The sort of hotel that exists purely to sleep in before you figure out what you're actually doing. I spent 4 days in Bangkok in total. I'll say this for it, it's never boring. The BTS SkyTrain sliding over streets choked with tuk-tuks and motorbike taxis and cars going nowhere. The smell of Muping grilling on charcoal at every corner. That sweet, savory pork smell that gets into everything and that I came to associate, by the end of the trip, with the particular feeling of being somewhere I had no history. Street vendors with carts of sum tam, the green papaya salad. That sharp combination of lime and fish sauce and chili that takes a full week to stop being surprising. Temples appearing between shopping malls with complete indifference to the incongruity. It was interesting. Genuinely interesting. But I could feel, even in those 4 days, that Bangkok wasn't what I was looking for. Too much of everything. Too many people who wanted something from you. Not aggressively, mostly, just persistently. Tuk-tuk drivers with a cousin who ran a gem shop. Helpful men outside tourist sites who knew of a special temple open only today. I wasn't bothered by it. I just didn't want to spend my time navigating it. I'd read that Chiang Mai was different, quieter, more settled. A place where people actually lived rather than passed through. I caught the overnight train from Hua Lam Phong on the 5th day, 14 hours north. A sleeper berth, the city thinning out into flat rice plains, and then gradually into hills. I slept better on that train than I had in months. Chiang Mai in the early morning is a different proposition to Bangkok entirely. The station is small. The air is cooler still, warm by Irish standards, but breathable. The kind of warmth you can live inside rather than survive. I took a Songsayu, the little red shared pickup trucks that function as taxis, into the old city and found my guest house on a quiet lane off Ratchadamnoan Road. Stone walls from the old fortifications visible at the end of the street. A temple just audible from somewhere nearby. Bells in the morning air. Monks in their orange robes doing the alms rounds past the guest house gate. I put my bag down in the room and stood at the window for a moment. Grand out, I thought. Nobody knows me here. I found a routine within the first week, which I do automatically in any new environment. It's not something I decide to do, it just happens. The same instinct that makes you cable manage a new server room before you've done anything else. Order first, then work. Coffee every morning at a place on Mimin Road, a Thai-owned shop, not one of the international chains, with wooden stools and a ceiling fan, and a woman behind the counter who made a yen tafo-style iced coffee that was thick and sweet in a way that should have been wrong and wasn't. I was there by 8 every morning. By the 4th day, she had it ready when I walked in. Evenings, I walked the moat. The old city of Chiang Mai is square. There's a moat on all 4 sides, the remnant of the original fortifications, and you can walk the full perimeter in about 40 minutes at a comfortable pace. I did this most evenings around 5, when the heat was softening and the light was going golden over the walls. It's a good walk. You pass locals doing the same thing, joggers, the odd monk, a few other farang. Nobody talks to you. You're just a man walking, and the city is just a city getting on with itself around you. I ate at a night market stall near the East Gate, a woman who made khao pad, fried rice with egg and vegetables, simple food, 60 baht a plate. I went back the third night because it had been good, and the fourth, and somewhere around the 6th or 7th visit she started having a plate most of the way ready when she saw me approach. I mention this not because it's significant, but because it was the first time in Chiang Mai that I felt, in a small and uncomplicated way, known, not known from Cork, known, with all the weight of 30 years of context, just recognized, expected, someone's regular. I found the massage shop around the start of week 2. It was on a side street near Tiathay Gate, one of the old city entrances. A modest place, clean front, a hand-painted sign in Thai and English, a few pairs of sandals outside the door, not a tourist trap in the obvious sense. Not one of those places with photographs of treatments in the window and a tout outside, just a small shop doing business. I walked past it twice before going in. This is not anxiety, I want to be clear. It's assessment. I was looking at the foot traffic locals as well as tourists, which is a good sign. The cleanliness of the entrance. Whether the staff visible through the window looked like they'd rather be somewhere else. They didn't. I decided it was fine. The first session cost 350 baht, about €9. An hour of traditional Thai massage, and if you've never had one, I'll tell you it's less relaxing than it sounds and more effective than you'd expect. It's not gentle. There's a lot of pressure. Elbows in places you didn't know needed attending to. Your limbs moved in directions that feel ambitious. I had a shoulder that had been giving me trouble since a particularly brutal server migration in late 2019. 2 weeks of bad posture in a cold server room, and somewhere around the 40-minute mark, I felt something in it release that I'd stopped expecting to release. The woman who worked on me introduced herself as Nok. Late 30s, I'd say. Efficient in the way of someone who's good at their job and doesn't need to perform enjoyment of it. Her English was functional rather than fluent enough to ask where the pain was, whether the pressure was too much, to say you're welcome when I thanked her, which I found entirely appropriate. I wasn't there for conversation. I tipped her 100 baht over the asking price when I left. I thought she'd worked for it. She said thank you. I said I'd be back. I came back twice that week, 3 times the week after. It became part of the routine: coffee on Niman, walk the moat at evening, massage on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The shoulder was genuinely improving. I was sleeping well. The money in the account in Cork sat there untouched, which had been the point. I want you to hold on to this part of the story for a moment. Because this, the coffee, the walk, the market stall, the 60 baht fried rice, the woman who had your plate ready before you asked this, was exactly the version of Thailand I'd come for. Nothing complicated, nothing asked of me, just a man, unnamed, getting on with it in the warmth. I was, as best I can tell, content. That's the setup. That's what it looked like before anything happened. It's important you know that part first. The 5th session was a Wednesday. I remember because I'd had my coffee on Niman, walked part of the moat in the morning for a change, and arrived at the shop just after 10 when it was quiet. One other customer, a German woman getting a foot massage near the window. The smell of lemongrass oil and something woodier underneath it. The ceiling fan turning slowly overhead. Nok worked on the shoulder for the first 20 minutes, which by then she knew was the point of me turning up. She learned, without my saying, that I preferred less conversation during the session rather than more. This I had noted as a mark in her favor. It was near the end, when I was face down and she was working along my upper back, that she mentioned the oil. Almost as an aside, the way you'd mention something you'd nearly forgotten. She said she had a special oil, family recipe, very good for shoulders like mine. She used the word tight and made a small squeezing gesture with her hand when I looked back at her. Not sold in the shop. She could bring it next time if I wanted to try. 200 baht. I said that sounded fine. She brought it the Friday session. A small brown bottle, no label, sealed with a bit of cling film under the cap. It smelled strongly of eucalyptus with something underneath. I couldn't immediately identify camphor, maybe, or a synthetic approximation of it. She applied a small amount to my shoulder during the session. It generated heat the way those products do. I thanked her. I paid. I tipped my 100 baht. 2 days later, I was walking back from the night market, taking a slightly different route past a row of small shops near the THHAK gate intersection, pharmacy on the corner. I went in to buy paracetamol, on the shelf near the counter, and I mean the identical bottle, same size, same brown glass, same absence of any label. I picked it up, smelled it through the cap. Eucalyptus and camphor. I asked the price. 40 baht. I bought one, took it home, put it next to Nok's bottle on the bathroom shelf, opened both, smelled each in turn. Identical. I put them both back on the shelf and went to make tea. I wasn't annoyed. I want to be clear about that, because the obvious reading of this moment is that I felt conned and was too proud to admit it. That's not what happened. What happened was more like the feeling you get when a user tells you the computer just started doing it by itself, and you can already see from the event log exactly what they clicked. A quiet confirmation of something you'd already suspected without quite articulating. I made a mental note. Filed it. Said nothing to Noak at the Monday session. The shoulder was genuinely better. That part was real. Boy, one kept going. It was about a week later, maybe 10 days, that the cousin appeared. Not in person, as I mentioned, during a session. Noak said, while working on my neck, that she had a cousin who ran a massage school. Proper training, she said. Medical. Very good for shoulder like mine. She could arrange a discount, as a favor. The word cousin landed the way certain words do when you're paying attention. I said that sounded interesting. I'd have a think about it. I went the following week. The school, I'll use the word loosely, was a 15-minute walk from the original shop, across the river on the other side of the old city. A slightly more formal-looking premises than Noak's place. Better furniture. A framed certificate or two on the wall. The man who greeted me was perhaps 40, good English, professional manner. He introduced himself with a Thai name I didn't catch cleanly. I'll call him the cousin, because that's how I thought of him. He was friendly in the careful way of someone who's been trained to be friendly. Asked about my shoulder with what seemed like genuine clinical interest, had me rotate my arm, pressed 2 fingers along the muscle in a way that suggested he knew something about anatomy. The session itself was competent, not dramatically better than Noak's, but not worse. More clinical in atmosphere, less personal. At the end, he outlined the package. 10 sessions, 15,000 baht. Significant discount from the individual price of 1,800. A saving, he said, of 3,000 baht if I took it now. I told him I was leaving Chiang Mai in a few weeks and wasn't sure I'd have time for the full 10. I'd take 2 individual sessions for now and see how the shoulder responded. He didn't push. Accepted the 2 bookings without any visible disappointment. Wrote me a small receipt on headed paper with the school's name on it. I folded it and put it in my pocket. That receipt, as it happens, would turn out to be useful later. I sat in his waiting area for a few minutes after paying, on the pretext of checking my phone, and I thought about the nagging sense I had that I'd seen this man before, not from another life, from this street, from somewhere in the vicinity of Noak's shop. I couldn't place it precisely. It was the kind of thing that might mean nothing. Chiang Mai's old city is not large, and you see the same faces if you walk the same streets. But I noted it anyway, the way I noted everything. I walked back to the guest house and did the arithmetic. The herbal oil, 200 baht. 2 sessions at the original shop, beyond the first few, 700 baht. 2 sessions at the cousin school, 3,600 baht. First session at the original shop and the sessions that started all this, roughly 5,000 in total across everything. Call it 9,600 baht. Just over 250 euro. For context, that's less than a return taxi fare from Cork City to Cork Airport. I told myself, which was accurate, that I was not worried. I told myself I was paying attention. Both of these things were true. The question I didn't ask myself, not yet, was whether paying attention and being a customer were starting to become the same thing, and whether I was comfortable with that. I went back to Noak's shop on the Wednesday. At this point, I'm still a customer. I want to be clear about that. I hadn't decided anything. I was just watching. The watching was about to get more interesting. The rapport building started gradually, the way it always does with this kind of thing. Not a sudden shift. More like the temperature changing in a room you don't notice the moment it happens, just that at some point it has. It was during the Monday session, about a week after I'd been to the cousin school. Noak was working along the left side of my neck when she mentioned, almost incidentally, that her son had an exam coming up. Secondary school. She was hoping to get him extra tuition, but it was expensive. She said this in the same tone she used to discuss the weather or ask about my shoulder. Not heavy. Not a setup for anything. Just a fact offered into the air between us. I said something appropriate. Something like that's tough, or I hope he does well. I don't remember exactly. What I remember is noting it. Over the following 10 days or so, there were a few more such offerings. A sick aunt in Lampang who needed some tests at the hospital. The cost of the Sonthieu fare going up. Small things, human things, nothing that felt like a direct pitch. No ask, no segue, no implication that I should do anything about any of it. It was more like someone leaving a door slightly open. I want to be precise about this because I think it matters. It didn't feel mechanical. That's the impressive part. Looking back, I've sat through enough corporate training on rapport building techniques to recognize the textbook version, and this wasn't that. This felt practiced to the point of being natural. Like someone who'd internalized the method so thoroughly it had become genuine, or close enough to genuine that the difference was very difficult to measure. I thought about that quite a bit. One Friday morning, it must have been week 6. I was walking past the stall that sold coffee and fruit next to the massage shop when I had the idea of buying Naka coffee. There was no strategic reason. She'd mentioned she liked the iced Thai tea they sold there, and I had the thought, and I bought it. Simple as that. Her reaction was the thing. She seemed startled, not overwhelmed, nothing dramatic. Just a brief pause in her usual composure, a slight flustering, and then a smile that I couldn't immediately categorize. Not the professional smile I'd seen for 6 weeks. Something less managed. I couldn't read it cleanly. That was the honest truth. I'd spent 22 years reading people's reactions when they weren't expecting scrutiny, and this one I genuinely couldn't place. Was it surprise because the gesture was unexpected, or surprise because the gesture landed somewhere real that she hadn't anticipated? I filed it without a verdict. The most interesting data point so far, I thought, and left it there. A few days after that is when I walked past the cousin's school from a different direction. I'd been to the Sunday market near Tiafe Gate and was taking a longer route back along the riverside of the old city. I wasn't specifically thinking about the school. I just happened to pass the street it was on and glanced down it out of habit. The sign had changed, new paint, different characters. Same building. I recognized the facade, the window placement, the slightly faded awning over the door, but a different name above it than the one on the receipt in my pocket. I stopped walking. I took out my phone. I had a photograph from the first visit I'd taken it because I'd wanted to look up the Thai characters and see what the name translated to. It had translated to something like Wellness Center, which hadn't been particularly illuminating. I pulled that photograph up now and compared it to what I was looking at. Same premises, different sign, not just repainting the same name, different characters entirely. I photographed the new sign, put my phone away, kept walking. I didn't feel alarmed. What I felt was the particular clarity of a system failure revealing itself. When a network goes down in a way that doesn't match any of the obvious causes, there's a moment where you set aside what you thought the problem was and simply start mapping what's actually in front of you. That's what this felt like. The sign was a data point. I added it to the others. The herbal oil, the word cousin, the nagging sense of having seen the man before. The picture was becoming more coherent. It wasn't complete yet, but I had enough of a shape to understand that I wanted to see the rest of it. I made a decision that afternoon. It didn't feel like a significant decision at the time. I went to a tourist shop on Rotterdam Road, the kind of place that sells Chang beer t-shirts and miniature tuk-tuks and novelty items for people who want to bring something home, and I bought a small notebook. Softcover. An elephant printed on the front in the style of traditional Thai temple art. It cost 40 baht. I thought the elephant was appropriate. I won't say why specifically. It just felt right. I began from the next session onwards to perform ignorance. If you've never done this deliberately, and most people haven't, it requires more attention than you'd expect. Not because it's difficult to seem confused, but because you have to calibrate it carefully. Too much, and you look like you're performing. The right level is just slightly below what the other person expects from you, marginally slower on the uptake. A small frown at numbers. The occasional request to have things written down because you can't keep track. I asked Nok to write the price of her next oil bottle in the notebook because I kept forgetting the numbers. Could she just jot it down? She did, without hesitation. I paid for a bottle with a 500 baht note and didn't count the change. I waited until I was outside and then counted it and photographed it. Correct change. She wasn't skimming cash. This was useful information. The operation was running somewhere else in the chain. I want to be honest about something here, and I'm going to say it plainly. The reason I was good at this performance was not some special skill. It was familiarity with the mirror image. I had watched people perform the same thing in reverse for 22 years. Users who knew perfectly well what had happened to their machine but needed to not know, officially, who would look at me with completely open faces and say I honestly have no idea, and mean it in the way people mean things they've decided to mean. I had also watched it at home, in various configurations, across 3 marriages, people performing a version of events they found more livable than the accurate one. I'm not bitter about any of that. I want to be clear on this point. Bitterness requires you to believe you were owed something different. I didn't feel owed, I just recognized the technique from long exposure. The sting, as I was already thinking of it privately, was now underway. The elephant notebook was in my jacket pocket. The cousin had been in touch through Nok with a new offer, something about volcanic stones and lymphatic drainage. 8,500 baht. I told Nok to let him know I was very interested. I was. The volcanic stone session was presented with more ceremony than anything that had come before it. The cousin had rearranged his front room slightly since my last visit. A low table with candles on it, some kind of incense burning that smelled of sandalwood, a printed leaflet that had clearly been produced recently and laminated at the copy shop around the corner. The leaflet described the treatment in English that was mostly accurate but occasionally creative. lymphatic stimulation, ancient volcanic minerals, cellular restoration. I read it carefully while nodding with the expression of a man encountering ideas that were new and fascinating to him. The cousin talked me through the treatment with the gravity of someone explaining surgery. The stones were heated to a specific temperature, he showed me, the little thermometer he used, which was a nice touch. The lymphatic system, he explained, was like a network of pipes, and my shoulder problem was almost certainly originating in a blockage in this network rather than in the muscle itself. The volcanic minerals would address the blockage at a cellular level. He said cellular level twice. I wrote it in the elephant notebook. 8,500 baht, he said, about €225. I told him it sounded exactly like what I needed. I asked if I could write down the name of the treatment because I wanted to research it when I got home. He seemed briefly uncertain about this, then said, of course. I wrote it down very slowly, mispronouncing it as I wrote. He corrected me gently. I thanked him and wrote the correction underneath the original in the notebook. I paid for the session in cash with 1,000 baht note too many, fumbling the counting in a way that read as endearing rather than suspicious. He sorted out the change himself and handed it to me with a small way. I thanked him profusely. Walking back to Not's shop afterwards, she fell into step beside me. She'd apparently been waiting near the entrance of the school, which I noted as confirmation that the handoff was coordinated rather than casual. We walked along the river road, past a row of restaurants setting up for the evening, the smell of charcoal and lemongrass coming off the grills, the light going amber on the water. About 3 minutes into the walk, Nok mentioned a friend. She said it the same way she said everything, not with any particular emphasis, almost as an afterthought. A friend who had a small shop nearby. Very nice, she said. Special items not for tourists, really, but her friend liked to meet interesting people. She used the phrase interesting people twice. I said that sounded lovely. What kind of shop? Gems, Nok said. Thai gemstones, very special, government certified. I should say at this point that I had read about the gem scam in my first week in Chiang Mai, on an expat forum I'd found while looking for restaurant recommendations. It's one of the oldest tourist traps in Thailand. The script involves government-sanctioned tax exemptions for foreigners purchasing gems, a policy that does not exist, and stones presented as investment grade that are worth a fraction of the asking price. It's been running in various forms for decades. The forum post I'd read included photographs of the kind of shop typically involved. The shop Nok took me to looked exactly like those photographs. The woman behind the counter introduced herself as Nok's friend. I never got her name and greeted me with a Y and a smile of tremendous warmth. The shop was small and well lit. Display cases along 2 walls, stones in neat arrangements on velvet, rubies, sapphires, a case of what were presented as star rubies. Investment quality, the woman said. Very rare. And because I was a guest in Thailand, not a resident, I could purchase tax-free a government program, she explained, to promote Thai gems internationally. I asked if I could ship to Ireland. Absolutely, she said. They handled that all the time. She brought out a printed rate card for international shipping. Very organized. She showed me a tray of stones she said were particularly special. A package of mixed gems, rubies and sapphires, investment grade with certificates, 45,000 baht. She said this the way you'd say a reasonable price for a reasonable thing. About €1,200. I held the tray, looked at the stones with the expression of a man genuinely considering. I asked her to write the prices in the elephant notebook because I'd want to compare when I got home. She wrote them carefully, along with the figures she said represented their market value in Europe. The margin she was claiming was approximately 15 times the actual retail price. I thanked her and said I'd need to think about it and check my bank balance. I wasn't sure I had enough in the account for something this significant. She said, of course, absolutely no rush. She gave me a business card. I photographed the display cases on the way out, pretending to take a photograph of a temple visible through the window behind them. The doctor appeared 3 days later. Nok arranged it as a favor. A very special doctor, she said. Traditional medicine, very experienced. He had a particular treatment for shoulders like mine that was, she said, permanent. He didn't see many patients. She'd asked him specially. The appointment was in a room above a shop house off a lane I hadn't been down before. Ground floor sold tourist clothing. The room upstairs had a reclining chair, a desk, the translator app open on a tablet, and on the wall, a laminated certificate in a frame. I photographed the certificate from across the room while pretending to look out the window. The doctor was perhaps 60, unhurried, with the calm authority of someone who'd been performing authority for a long time. The consultation involved him asking questions through the translator app: my age, my lifestyle, how long the shoulder had been troubling me. He listened to my answers with great seriousness. Then he delivered his diagnosis. The problem, he said, was not the shoulder itself. It was an imbalance in the body's energy pathways, He used a Thai term the translator rendered as something like vital channels that had been present for years and would not resolve without proper treatment. The massage had helped the symptoms, but the root cause required a course of traditional medicine, herbs specific to my imbalance. 8 weeks, 28,000 baht. He said this while looking at me with complete professional gravity, the way you tell someone they needed a root canal. I wrote it in the notebook. 28,000 baht, about €740. I said I was very interested, but wanted to ring my daughter first. I invented a daughter in this moment, I'm not sure why. It just seemed plausible because she was a nurse back in Ireland, and I always checked with her on medical things. The doctor nodded approvingly. Very sensible, the translator said, he said. It was in the moment of nodding and writing in the notebook that I looked up and saw them all together for the first time. The doctor, at his desk. The cousin, who had come along without any particular explanation and was seated to the left, supposedly as a familiar face, and behind the cousin, the woman from the gem shop, who had apparently arrived to translate, though the tablet was already translating perfectly well. 3 faces, in the same room, in the same light, all turned slightly toward me with the same attentive expression. I'd been cataloging them separately for 10 days, but side by side the resemblance was simply undeniable. The cheekbones, the set of the jaw, the way all 3 of them tilted their heads fractionally to the left when they were listening. A family gesture. The kind of thing you don't learn, you inherit it. I looked at the notebook in my lap. I had 5 nodes of the network map. Knock at the entry point, the cousin running the upsell funnel, the gem shop woman handling the investment pitch, the doctor at the top of the chain, where the real money was, and the family structure holding it all together, coordinating the handoffs, calibrating the pace. The product was credibility. The root was trust built incrementally over weeks. The margin was extraordinary at every stage. The org structure was a family operation, which explained both the coordination and the confidence. It felt, I'll be honest with you, like the moment a corrupted file finally throws up its error code and you understand exactly what's been failing and why. Not triumphant, just clear. The particular satisfaction of a system revealing its own logic. I had enough. I thanked the doctor, said I'd be in touch after speaking to my daughter, put the notebook in my jacket pocket, walked down the stairs and out onto the street, past the tourist clothing and into the evening air. The question now was what I was going to do with all of it. I thought about the exit for 2 days before I made it. Not because I was uncertain. I knew what I was going to do. I just wanted to be sure about the how, because the how mattered to me in a way I find slightly difficult to explain. There was a version of this where I walked in and laid everything on the table. Here's what I know. Here's the notebook. Here's the photographs. I thought about that version quite seriously. I dismissed it for the same reason I never confronted users who lied to me on the help desk. Because it wouldn't have changed anything. The data was already collected. The ticket was already written. A confrontation would have introduced variables. I didn't need raised voices, loss of face, a scene on a quiet street in a city where I had no particular interest in making enemies. And more practically, I had no standing to demand anything. I'd lost €250. You don't hold a press conference for €250. What I did instead was go back on the Monday morning and have my session. Knock worked on the shoulder. The ceiling fan turned. The lemongrass oil smell settled around us the way it always did. I lay face down and looked at the floor tiles and thought about the fact that this was the last time, and that I'd known it since Saturday, and that she didn't know it. At the end, I sat up and paid, the usual amount. I counted out the tip 100 baht, as always, and set it on the little tray by the door. Then I told her I was leaving Chiang Mai. I said I'd been very happy here, which was true. I thanked her for the sessions, which I meant the shoulder was genuinely better, that part of the story had been entirely real. I said she was very good at her job, which was also true. Then I extended my hand. I'd been thinking about this handshake since Saturday as well, not planning it exactly, more wondering what I'd find in it, whether there'd be anything to find at all. She took my hand, and what I found, and I'm telling you this because it's the most honest part of the whole story, was that she looked sorry, not the managed professional expression I'd been watching for 8 weeks. Something else, a slight tightening around the eyes, the kind of look that on a cork face would mean I wish this had been different. I held the handshake for a moment, longer than necessary. She held it too. I don't know what to do with that. I've thought about it since, and I still don't know. It could mean nothing. A skilled performer reading the goodbye correctly and producing the appropriate response. It could mean something I have no way of measuring, the most interesting unresolved question in the whole operation, and the only one I'm still sitting with. I said goodbye. I left. I did not look back, because looking back is not a habit I've cultivated. That evening I sat in the guest house with a Chang beer I'd bought at the 7-Eleven on the corner, 60 baht, cold enough, adequate to the occasion, and I opened a new tab on my laptop. I joined a Chiang Mai expat Facebook group in my second week, the same way I joined the forum, because information about a place is useful and costs nothing. Several thousand members. Active enough to be worth monitoring. I wrote the post over about 40 minutes. It went through 3 drafts. The first was too long. The second was too dry, even by my standards. The third was right-specific enough to be useful, structured enough to follow, anonymous enough to be responsible, no names. But everything else. The street near Tiafai Gate. The small massage shop with the rotating staff. The herbal oil that could be bought for 40 baht at the pharmacy on the corner. The word cousin and where it led. The school with the change sign. I included the photograph of both signs, side by side, which was, I thought, the most useful thing in the post. The gem shop and its address, described without naming it. The government tax exemption story in full. The doctor's room above the tourist clothing shop. And a description of the laminated certificate, which I suggested viewers might want to photograph if they found themselves in that room. The pricing at each stage, 200 baht, 1800 baht per session, 45,000 baht for stones, 28,000 baht for herbs. The family structure as I'd observed it. I ended with a note that I had no particular complaint. I'd spent 9,600 baht across the whole operation, which I could afford, and had, in a sense, chosen to spend in the course of documenting it. My purpose in posting was not grievance. It was that someone else might find it useful. I posted it at 10:30 at night. By the time I woke up the following morning, there were 112 comments. By that evening, 340. Several people identified the gem shop within the first hour. Apparently it was already known in certain circles, had come up before. A woman wrote that she'd bought the herbal oil 3 months ago, paid the 200 baht, and felt slightly foolish reading the pharmacy price. I replied to tell her the oil did work, which was true, so she had no reason to feel foolish. Then there was the message from the German engineer. He'd bought the 10-session package at the cousin's school, 15,000 baht. He still had 4 sessions left and his tourist visa was expiring in 12 days. He asked if I thought he could still use them. I told him honestly that I wouldn't go back and that the sessions he'd had were probably fine physically, but that I'd consider the money spent. He replied, "Yes, I think so too. Thank you for posting." I replied to all of them. Every private message, every comment that asked a question. It took most of the next day. I found this part genuinely satisfying in a way that surprised me slightly, and then didn't surprise me at all. The help desk instinct is very durable. A problem presents itself. You document it. You share the solution. Someone can use it now who couldn't before. Ticket resolved. The post got shared outside the group. I found it referenced on 2 other forums I wasn't a member of. Someone sent me a message saying they were a travel writer and asked if they could use my experience as a basis for an article. I said they could use the facts freely, but asked them not to name me. They didn't. By the end of the week, the post had done what it was going to do. The comments slowed. The private messages became occasional. I had a beer most evenings at the same table and read the responses as they came in. And there was something satisfying about the whole exercise that I was trying to look at clearly. I had done a useful thing that was real. The German engineer, and the woman with the oil, and the dozen others who'd messaged to say they'd been about to go to the gem shop, they'd gotten something from this. But I also noticed a quieter thing happening as the week went on. A slight settling, like a system that had been running a diagnostic finally returning to idle. And with it, for the first time since I'd stopped going to the massage shop, the particular quality of the evenings, the coffee, the moat walk, the 60 baht fried rice became purely itself again. No longer a backdrop to something I was investigating. Just evenings. Quiet, warm, nobody knowing me. I sat with that for a while. There was something I'd lost that didn't fit in the post, that I hadn't found a way to say in 340 comments. Something I was only beginning to understand was a cost at all. I'm going to try to say it now. Right. The financial damage, not 1,600 baht, 255 euro. I know, because I know you're waiting for that number, and I always give it early when I tell this story in person. I give it early because I want to see the laugh. It's a reliable laugh. The slight disbelief of it, the anticlimax after everything that came before. And I always wait for the laugh to finish before I say the next part, because the next part is where the story actually is. I knew by day 3 of running the sting that I had the structure, the entry point, the funnel, the family connection, the pricing at each stage. I could have written the post on day 3 and it would have been just as useful, just as specific, just as complete. The German engineer would still have been warned. The gem shop would still have been identified. I kept going for 10 more days. I told myself it was thoroughness, wanting the full network before posting, not wanting to publish something incomplete and have someone tell me I'd missed a node. All of that was true, technically. But thoroughness doesn't explain why I was looking forward to the Monday session, why I was at the coffee shop on Nimin at 8 in the morning with something that felt, if I'm being honest, like anticipation. The honest version is this. I went back because it was somewhere to be, because there was a woman who knew my name and asked about my shoulder, and who I'd spent 8 weeks watching carefully enough that I'd started to understand her rhythms in a way that felt, against all available evidence, like knowing someone. Because sitting in the elephant notebook phase, performing the confused farang, asking her to write prices down, watching her write them, I was at minimum present, engaged. In a way, the moat walk and the 60 baht fried rice and the very pleasant solitude of Chiang Mai evenings didn't quite require of me. I had gone to Thailand, I told myself and my mother, to be nobody, unnamed, non-historied. And I got that. I genuinely got that. I genuinely got that. For 6 weeks, it was exactly what I'd come for. But it turns out that being nobody is fine until someone starts paying attention to you, even falsely, and then you notice the difference. I've been thinking about the 3 marriages in light of this, and I want to say something about them that I haven't said before. Not to the lads, not to my mother, not to the priest who eventually stopped asking. It wasn't that the women were wrong or that I was unlucky in any specific way. It was something more structural than that. I have a habit I can see it clearly from here, in a way I couldn't see it from Cork, of staying slightly longer than the evidence warrants, of watching a system that started to fail and thinking, wait, just wait. It might resolve itself into something that works. I did it in 3 marriages across 20 years. I did it in a massage shop in Chiang Mai for 10 days. The question of what that means about me is one I'm taking my time with. Where I am now, still in Chiang Mai. I'm on a tourist visa, 60 days extended once through a border run to Chiang Rai straightforward, a couple of hours, nothing dramatic. I've been looking at whether the retirement visa might make sense longer term. You need 800,000 baht in a Thai bank account, or proof of a monthly pension above a certain threshold, and you need to be 50 years old, which I am. I've not decided yet. The paperwork is manageable. The decision is the part 1000 still considering. Different coffee shop now. A place off the Mo Road that I found through the same expat group. Different massage place too, recommended by 3 separate people who vouched for it specifically in the context of my post. It's good. The woman who works on my shoulder doesn't make conversation, which I appreciate, and she's never once mentioned a cousin. I still walk the moat at dusk. I still eat at the night market stall. The woman there still has the plate ready when she sees me coming. That part hasn't changed. I rang my mother on a Sunday about 3 weeks after the post. She asked how the holiday was going. I told her I wasn't sure it was a holiday anymore. She was quiet for a moment in the particular Irish way, and then she said, "Are you all right?" Not with any alarm, just the question. I said yes. "Which is true," she said. "Well, ring me next Sunday." I said I would. Here is what I'd want you to take from this. If you're the kind of person who comes to Thailand and thinks you're too careful to be caught by anything, you probably are too careful for the obvious things. The gem shop, the tuk-tuk to the temple, the helpful man who knows a special deal. Those are easy. Those are visible from a distance. What you're not protected against is loneliness. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind that shows up in the face or makes you do foolish things in bars, the quiet kind. The kind that's been sitting in you for so long it doesn't feel like anything anymore. Just background noise. Just the machine running. That kind doesn't make you stupid. It makes you a slower auditor. I saw every single red flag in real time. Everyone. I wrote them in a notebook. I photographed the evidence. I knew the architecture by day 3. I just looked at it longer than I needed to because on the other side of the architecture was a woman who knew my name and asked about my shoulder. And that, it turns out, was worth something to me that I hadn't accounted for. Thailand didn't get me. I want to be clear about that. I walked in with my eyes open. I kept them open the whole way through, but somewhere in there I still managed to find something to miss when it was gone. I suppose that's not Thailand's fault either. That's Brendan's story, and we're grateful to him for telling it with the particular precision and honesty that, as you've heard, is rather his trademark. Here at This Is Thailand, we tell a lot of stories about men who lost fortunes, men who built houses in the wrong name, men who followed their hearts straight into situations they should have seen coming from a distance. Brendan lost €255 and spotted everything. And yet his story sits with us in a way that some of the larger disasters don't. Because it's about something most people don't put in the ledger. The thing you were hoping for, quietly, that you hadn't told anyone about. The version of the situation that you wanted to be real, even while you were documenting that it wasn't. That gap between what you knew and what you wanted is where Thailand does its quietest work. If you're planning to come here and based on who watches this channel, most of you are, we'd ask you one thing before you land, not to watch out for the scams. You'll spot the scams. Ask yourself what you're hoping for, specifically, honestly, because Thailand will find out, even if you don't tell it. And if it finds something you didn't know was there, well, that's when the story gets interesting. Thank you for watching. This is Thailand. If Brendan's story rang true for you, drop a comment below. We read everyone. If you've got a story of your own, the link to share it is in the description. Like and subscribe if you're not already, and we'll see you same time next week. Take care of yourselves out there.